Hey, what's going on guys, my name is IndyGamerTag and I'm back for your daily Fortnite video. In today's video we're going to be covering FaZe Jarvis' new controller settings for Fortnite Battle Royale. If you guys are going to enjoy the video, a like would be very much appreciated. On the contrary, if you genuinely dislike today's video, then feel free to leave a dislike. Also, if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. And with that out of the way, let's hop right into FaZe Jarvis' settings. Now, I made a video already talking about FaZe Jarvis' settings, and you guys really loved it and enjoyed it, and he has changed them since, so I feel like this is probably due time for an updated video on his new settings. I've also covered FaZe Sway's Fortnite settings as well as Razor X's Fortnite settings, so if you guys are interested in their settings, then you guys can check the link in the description below, or you can check out my channel and find those videos. Nonetheless, FaZe Jarvis' settings, of course he plays on an Xbox One controller. I think he plays with an Elite controller, but he doesn't use any of the paddles. And also, in case you're wondering, he plays controller on PC, which doesn't really affect much. So we're first going to talk about sensitivity settings, then move on to miscellaneous settings, talk about brightness, his colorblind mode, then his keybinds, and lastly discuss his dead zones. This way, of course, you guys can replicate his settings and also share with you guys how to optimize your own settings after we cover his. So first of all, his controller sensitivity setting for X and Y are both set to a 0.737. This is actually a really good setting. Even if you're not that great at Fortnite, the setting should still do you justice. And if you are good at Fortnite, then the setting will do you justice as well. I've been using the sensitivity setting for the past week, and to be quite honest, my overall improvement in just free aim has improved substantially. Also, it's worth mentioning that the X and Y sensitivity settings refers to free aiming, so when you're not aimed down sights with a weapon. What this will typically affect is going to be shotgun accuracy, because about half the time you're hip firing. Same thing with SMGs. And then lastly, it'll affect when you have like your pickaxe out and things like that, when you're just generally looking around. So this is definitely a very important and crucial setting that you want to set, obviously in your own comfort zone. Next is his targeting sensitivity, and this is set to a 0.247. Once again, another setting that I've been using the past week, and to be honest, this setting as well has helped me improve my accuracy tenfold. So again, it's at a 0.247, which is actually quite lower than the average player. In fact, I'd say the average player has their targeting sense at around a 0.30 or up to like a 0.35. He has this almost a full decimal place lower from a 0.35. And to be honest, when I first thought about using this setting, I really thought that it would be unnatural and just weird feeling and very slow. However, it really is not slow at all, and you're still able to keep up with players as they're flying through the air and running around. I strongly recommend you guys try out this targeting sensitivity. Again, it's a 0.247. It's also worth mentioning that this will affect basically when you're aimed down sights with a weapon, typically used with a shotgun, SMG, and then more than likely this will basically affect all of your AR shots. So this once again is another very important and crucial sensitivity setting. Next is going to be the controller scope sensitivity. This one's not as important as we're not typically using weapons that have scopes on them, maybe once or twice a game when we use like a sniper. But all this affects as of right now is the scope revolver, scoped AR, and then the sniper as far as I know of. And he uses his at a 0.365. Once again, the setting is actually quite lower than the average player. I believe the average player has this setting at around a 0.4 to a 0.5, so it's just a little bit lower than that. And I've kind of messed around with this setting a little bit, and to be honest, the overall area for this setting really does help a lot. So I definitely recommend using the 0.365 scope sensitivity like he does. Again, this one's not as important as the previous sensitivity settings, as we're not typically aimed down with weapons with scopes all the time during games, but still nonetheless it's definitely worth perfecting this setting for yourself. Next is going to be his two probably most popular sensitivities you guys want to know. That's going to be controller building sensitivity, and then we'll talk about the controller edit mode sensitivity. So his building sensitivity is set to a 1.990, almost maxed out at a 2, and this is actually about what I have mine at, to be honest, and I definitely will recommend this. However, if you guys have yours a lot lower, I'd say if it's anything lower than a 1.7, to not make the huge jump up to 1.990. In fact, what you can do instead to actually kind of crawl your way up to the setting where it's not out of control once you use it, is to move up in small increments, meaning if you have it at like a 1.4 right now, once you're very comfortable with that setting, then move it to a 1.45 or maybe even a 1.5. Once you're comfortable with that setting, then increase it again by basically the same amount, whether that be half a decimal place or a full decimal place. Continue doing this and you'll see that you're probably up here in the 1.9s in literally no time. So again, this is at a 1.990. Next is his controller edit mode sensitivity, which again I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering what this is at, and this is at a 1.840. so this one, just like the building sensitivity, is quite high, almost at the maxed out setting. I definitely don't think this is a bad edit mode sensitivity. A lot of people have different opinions on the edit mode sensitivity. A lot of people like to have it really low, and others think they should have it really high. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I typically keep mine a little bit lower than this, but still nonetheless, this won't really impact much. When you edit in Fortnite, pretty much no matter what sensitivity you have, you're going to run across user errors. That's just the way the editing mechanic is in the game. So by increasing your sensitivity, don't think it'll actually lower your errors or maybe increase them at all. It just overall allows for faster edits, regardless if you're making an error or not. So that's all of his sensitivity settings. We're now going to move on to miscellaneous settings. First one he has on is sprint by default. Of course, I strongly recommend this. I talk about this in every setting video, how I strongly recommend everyone have sprint by default on. There's a couple of reasons, one of which, probably the most important, is that it actually frees up a free button for us to bind to an action in our keybinds. That of course being L3, which is the left analog stick clicked in. Also, to be honest, there's never a point in Fortnite where you shouldn't be running or sprinting rather. Of course, unless you're crouching, but when you're crouching, this setting doesn't take effect. So again, sprint by default should be on. Next is edit mode aim assist. I believe this is on by default. However, pretty much everyone, including Jarvis, has this turned off. Another one that I really recommend. Reason being is because Fortnite kind of tries to predict what edit you're going to make. So if you're trying to make a door edit, it'll like predict that you're going to do like maybe like a 3-layer edit at the top of a wall, and it'll automatically bring your cursor up there, and it just creates a lot of complications that's not necessary. So definitely make sure you have edit mode aim assist off for overall more control. Next, he has auto open doors on. In fact, I never really used this setting, so I can't really give my own opinion on it, but he clearly seems to like it. Next is going to be auto pick up weapons, but he has this off. However, in one of his previous videos, I think sometime this past week, he talked about this setting and said that he tried messing with it a little bit and turned it on. However, it created so many different complications, and said that sometimes when you're holding a weapon and you run through like a pile of weapons, let's say you just eliminated someone, it'll swap out the weapon that you have without you obviously trying to pick it up. So basically he says to have this setting off, and I completely agree with that. Lastly is his auto sort consumables to the right is turned on. This really is just how you use your inventory or how you optimize it. If you typically place your consumables to the right of your inventory, then this setting should be on. Consumables, of course, referring to things such as shields, bandages, medkits, chug jugs, slurp juices, anything that you basically can consume in the game, typically healing items. So again, if you don't typically place them all the way to the right, then this setting should be off. However, if you're on the contrary side of that, then this setting should be on. Next is his brightness setting. He used to have it at like a 0.8. However, for whatever reason, he has it at a 0.5 now. So he did lower it to the default value of 0.5, and I'm not entirely sure as of why or the reasoning behind this. But most of you guys probably already have this brightness setting yourselves, so no changes need to be made here. Now for his audio, there's no really setting changes he has made. However, he does mention that he always has his headset audio almost maxed out, so that's just worth mentioning in this video. Probably allows him to hear a lot more than obviously if you have a lower volume. That goes without saying. Next is going to be his colorblind mode. Now his colorblind mode is actually set to Duo to Nope, and his colorblind strength is set to 3. I personally do not like this colorblind mode whatsoever. Kind of makes the colors really bland in my opinion. However, this is the setting he uses for whatever reason. Now next we're going to be moving on to his keybinds, probably what most of you guys are definitely looking forward to. So he plays on a custom builder pro, as everyone should. Now his keybinds don't have that many changes, however they're very unique and are very weird. So first of all, his edit is set to L3, which is the left analog stick clicked in. Once again, this is why we have sprint by default on. Next, his toggle pickaxe is set to B, which would be circle for PS4 players. And then his Y button is set to switch mode, which would be triangle for PS4 players. Of course, switch mode means basically when you have anything in your inventory out, you'll press Y for switch mode and it'll switch to your blueprints where you can build and things like that. And then lastly, his confirm button is set to Y. And that's all of his keybind changes that he has made. We're not going to be talking about his dead zones, which honestly I think is probably one of the most important parts of anyone's setting, lineup, or layout, whatever you like to call it. So his left analog stick has a dead zone of 0.10. His right analog stick has a dead zone of 0.05, which is the minimum. So these are quite low. The default value for both dead zones are set to a 0.2. So his left analog stick is basically half of that, and his right analog stick is actually a fourth of that. Now, basically everyone should know what dead zones are, however I know it's still a gray area nonetheless. Dead zones basically refers to the zone where your analog sticks need to be at in order for the game to put it in effect. So if that doesn't make sense, just lower them all the way or raise them all the way and you guys can see basically what this will affect. It's slightly kind of related to sensitivity, but not that much. Overall, this just allows for a faster game pace. So if you really are a very non-aggressive player, if you play very passively, then having the default dead zones again at 0.2 for each probably is your best bet. However, if you think that you're an aggressive player or just like to play aggressively, then definitely copy these dead zone settings or just at least around them. Once again, his left analog stick is set to a 0.1 and his right analog stick is set to a 0.05. There you guys have it. That is all the settings of today's video. Again, we covered sensitivity settings, we covered miscellaneous settings, brightness, talked about his audio settings just slightly, then went on to his colorblind settings. Lastly, we talked about his keybinds and then moved on to dead zone. And that's going to be it for today's video, guys. If you want to see any other controller player settings, comment down below who you'd like to see. Again, we've covered Jarvis, FaZe, and Razor X. So if you're interested in FaZe or Razor X's settings, check out my channel, or I'll leave links to them in the description below. If you guys enjoyed today's video or found it helpful, a like would be very much appreciated. On the contrary, if you genuinely disliked today's video, then feel free to leave a dislike. Also, if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, feel free to subscribe, as well as turning on those post notifications. And with that out of the way, my name is IndyGamerTag. Thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Adios.